Welcome to the Screenaholics Podcast, episode 15. My guest today is Lee Glickstein, the founder of Speaking Circles International and the writer of Be Heard Now. And the subtitle is something like Never Fear Public Speaking Again. That Lee came out with that book 20-something years ago when he was, Speaking Circles was relatively new. And he's coming out with another book this year called Be Seen Now. And the story of how the two books are connected comes out in the podcast a little bit. Just to give you a little brief background on what Speaking Circles is, I was directed to check out Speaking Circles myself when some friends were noticing that I just get a little bit tongue-tied sometimes. And unfortunately, you still do see that today, and I'm really glad I got to talk to Lee because it reminded me of some of the practices that he suggests. He talks about being with one person at a time. He talks about having listening and listening to the listening, like just being with the people that you're speaking to and getting connected with them as an audience and allowing that to sort of help words come into your mind. And because we are connected, he says that therefore we gain from focusing on that connection and solidifying that connection. And it was great to talk to him, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. And I think he's a great resource. You can go to speakingcirclesinternational.com to find out more about how to contact him or read some of his writing. You can get his book, Be Heard Now, on Amazon. Something else just popped into my mind that I wanted to mention as part of all this podcasting. It was that I was just thinking about Screenaholics as it's been kind of a podcast that goes wherever it just wants to go, and that's certainly what I would like for it to do. I like just interviewing different people who have a passion and talking to them. But I told Lee I was interested in talking about spiritual awakening, because if Screenaholics were a 12-step group for people who are addicted to their screens, then, the first step is just admitting that there's a problem. Admitted we're powerless over our screens and our lives have become unmanageable. And the second step then would be came to believe a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So if my first 14 episodes were just all over the place, on episode 15, I thought, well, maybe I should, by now, maybe I should be coming toward a solution, toward the spiritual awakening that is part of the 12-step programs. And for my Screenaholic consumers, we could start talking about the solution, talking about the higher power that could restore us to sanity. And so I mentioned this to Lee, that perhaps the direction we would go would be talking about spiritual awakenings. And Lee had fun with that mostly. And I hope you have fun with it too. Yeah, that's what I got for you today. Really fun talking to Lee. Really fun talking to you. Like and subscribe. And I'll see you at the next one, episode 16. All right then. Take care now.
It would feel good if you started as if you were really starting something instead of
all right, so you wrote a book 25 years ago.
Be Heard Now.
We heard
How to Get Over Stage Fright. Seen Now. Took me 25 years to get from Be Heard Now to Be Seen. I'm ready to be seen as well as heard.
you did, but it doesn't strike me that you. Public speaking, I guess. Why public?
It was my worst fear. I was scared. I was totally scared till I was almost 50. By the way, I'm 80 now, if you can believe it. Because I stay young, because this is a fountain of youth. Telling the truth to groups is the fountain of youth.
Telling the truth to groups. But is that what brought you to public speaking? As a fear, did you have some truths to tell?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be a comedian or a therapist or a guru, but I couldn't talk to people and get my words across. And so I had to create. I failed Toastmasters. You don't know how hard it is to fail Toastmasters. So I had to find, couldn't do it. I couldn't fake it till I make it. So I had to create a way to get through. And I created classes called speaking circles eventually, where people would have a chance to speak or not speak, but to be with one person at a time and speak from a sense of oneness, which is the spiritual aspect of it. When you speak from oneness, that we're all connected, you don't have to be afraid.
I complimented somebody earlier this week for having a great sense of the moment. And, but that seems to speak to that a little bit, like maybe a technique for getting into.
Well, I like to not call it a technique.
Yeah, I hear that.
But you are in the moment.
I was just laughing. I forgot my microphone. Okay, go ahead.
When you're in the, not like I just get into the moment, but when I'm with you, like I am now, or with a listener, like I am now, and really sense that we're connected, that's the moment. You don't just go into the moment. To me, it has to be relational. I call my approach relational presence. I'm only present relational.
So what's I guess I think what I like is maybe to start with the current project and then go back to hear about the project 25 years ago. Is that sequence? It's all the same. It's all the same project.
My project is to create safe spaces for people to talk and express what's happening for them, what they want to do in the world, what they're doing in the world, what's happening to them. And I want them to find their bold voice of unself-conscious to express what you need to express. We need to be heard. In order to express ourselves, we need listening. That's the missing piece. So when I facilitate my groups, as you've experienced when you've been in them, is that I first ask the listeners to be available, so that the person up front, who I don't call the speaker because you don't have to speak, as soon as you say, get up and speak, you're creating tension. You don't have to speak, but I ask the listeners, be with the person up front, the way you're being with me now, the way I'm being with you now. And then the person whose turn it is gets to speak into the listening on one person at a time. And that's a whole different experience than the way we mostly talk or the way people teach. But you as a teacher know not to do that.
Well, I forget, but hey, for our listeners, and there's the other window into the room. But if you could keep that, so I want them to hear you.
I love to be heard.
Yeah,
but that was 25 years ago. Now you see.
So it's all I do like chronological order. So let's go back.
That doesn't go with my biological orders. But go on.
Biological orders. What's the and chronos means time, and to some extent we could doubt the reality of time, or to get into the moment we don't obsess over the chronology, I suppose.
No,
but
obsess over everything else.
Obsess over everything else. Okay. So, you wanted to be a therapist. You wanted to be a comedian. You wanted to be a guru.
I wanted to be noticed, and I wanted to be helpful in the world.
Yeah.
But I had stage fright. Stage 3 stage fright. I just made up stage 3 stage fright. Meaning I couldn't think on my feet.
Yeah.
Even sitting down, I couldn't.
Yeah.
If I had to speak, even to one person, I had stage fright. I was a shy little chubby boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't until I was nearly 50 that I created a space that I could step into and find my.
Oh, so I'm curious. Like, did you find that you really got comfortable yourself before you started helping others?
No,
Or
I was helping them, and I could only be okay when I was teaching.
sure, that makes sense.
And then after doing it for like 6 or 7 years, somebody said, Lee, why don't you get up? I got up, and I was as scared as anybody who sometimes comes to my circles at first, before you feel the safety. And then I started to use my own medicine to get over my stage.
So it started out as spaces where you helped people get together to practice.
Yeah.
And you trained them more on the listening. But even then, you were. It's more. I mean, it must have felt more experimental at the beginning.
My first classes, because I was a stand-up comedian, an aspiring, perspiring, not inspiring stand-up comedian, and I started to teach. When they say you can't do, you teach. Well, I was not good. Sometimes I was good if they laughed at my first joke and remembered the second one. But I started teaching. I started doing classes in comedy clubs among aspiring comedians, and I'd have them get up and I'd give them 5-minute turns, and my instruction was, dare to be boring. The truth is funny enough. Just talk about what's funny to you. And be with one person at a time. Be relational. And that's how I started. And the people who were really good at it had been people who had gone to 12-step meetings.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were used to telling everything,
Yeah.
And some of them became really good comedians. So I started as a comedy coach, and then eventually it was about getting over stage fright. And it wasn't called speaking circles. I forgot what I called it. Humor and recovery. Eventually morphed into speaking circles, and the rest is history.
Wow, humor and recovery.
Shows in San Francisco with people in recovery who were funny.
I mean, I know there is a stand-up school in maybe now there are many, or maybe zero, or more or less, but like 10 years ago there was a stand-up school, and it had some recovery influence, I think, too. But they would offer you the stage at the Purple Onion. There's some office in Union Square, and then you go over to the Purple Onion and perform in front of 7 or 8 people, which is a nice sized.
Well, that's a good crowd for a starter.
That's exactly what you want. Yeah. What about, where did the book fit in when you were starting out? Like, because, and I also imagine, like, if this became what you did all the time, but at first you must have been like something you do. You have a day job and then you do this.
I was a temporary typist, and when word processing was starting to be a thing, I started with a partner. I started a secretarial service downtown San Francisco where we did word processing, because a lot of the people, lawyers and other people, this was how many years ago? 30 years ago. They didn't have they didn't have even IBM. So what are the IBM ones that have memory cards and all? So we had the memory card machine, so people would come to the office. So I did that, and that's how I made my living. I was a temporary typist at other law firms and other places. And then as I started to do what became known as speaking circles, that became how I supported myself.
Okay, yeah. And I guess, well, that it's kind of interesting, because, like, for here, I mean, you've been doing it for 30 years. This is like your this is like this is how I know you as, Lee Glickstein speaking circles. That's who I'm like, that's what I'm talking to you about, and that's what, like, all this is. But, like, I guess at that time when you transferred to it, it was a new. You're sort of transferring from a whole different, like, life of,
It was my second career. I thought my second career would be comedian.
Really?
But then I became a teacher of comedy-ish. And then I morphed into, I became a humorist. I came down from comedian to humorist. I joined the National Speakers Association, where I tried to help other speakers in the humor of their talks. I became a humor speaker. I was a humorous speaker who taught about healthy humor. And I preached humor that wasn't hurtful. So, and then I will move to coaching speakers, not just to be funny, but how to be present and how to speak to one person at a time. And then eventually my speaking circles began to do very well, and that became my.
Wow. Was that the first like rule or the first like you said, like listening? It sounds like teaching people to listen. Like I forget what some of the words you use when you're giving that instruction.
Yeah, I'll tell you what.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why nobody else teaches this, Mark. I can't understand.
Yeah.
Because this is it's the first rule of speaking that nobody knows. You go to Toastmasters and they don't tell you this because they don't.
Tell it into the microphone. This seems important. Tell it into the microphone.
Yeah. Relational presence. It took a while to call it relational presence. I'm only present relationally to you. And the whole idea that makes Speaking Circle go, the whole mystery or mystique about it is so simple. When you're in front of a group, be with one person at a time, not just occasionally, not just looking around, but really be with one person at a time and see them so they feel seen. Now, what does it mean? It's not just eye contact. I don't use the word eye contact. It's like eye service. It's what kind of language can I use here? Is there any restriction?
No, there's no restriction.
Eye contact is bullshit because that's like a technique of no, I need to really see you so you feel seen. Now you can say, how can I see you so you feel seen and still be able to keep up your content? The thing is, first, be in a safe place where you can be with one person at a time without having to make any sense, without having to speak, being able to take pauses, but be in a place where suddenly you are practicing the one person at a time, not caring how it comes out.
Yeah.
As you start to learn, you go from one person to another, and lo and behold, you start to not have to think. You start to not have to go up or down, or because your muscle of presence, the listening is drawing out your content. It's not that you have to get up and not know. It's not like I'm asking speakers to not have content or something to say. You sort of know what you know, but when you've practiced the muscle memory of being with one person at a time, you begin to think with them rather than I have to go here to think.
Yeah. Go here. And what you just did it's kind of like almost a natural thing that happens to beginning public speakers, right? Like you almost do like a look inward. You can like look inward. This is a weird expression, but you kind of almost mimed it, right?
Well, you could call this the inner game of public speaking, like the inner game of tennis. It's an inner game of being comfortable with yourself. And Mark, I have to tell you, I'm not comfortable with myself most of the time in the world.
Oh yeah.
But give me a group.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could be with you. I could be with you. I can agree that I have to rush. Silences are wonderful. Pauses are magical. In fact, in my new book, which you were either asking me about,
right?
I talk a lot about the magic of the pause, not as a technique, but as a natural stopping to let the audience catch up, to think on your feet without leaving your listener. And you practice enough. The reason everybody wants to be that way, it gives you magnetism and charisma. But to get there, you need to practice, not just Toastmasters or practice your speech. It's like stand-up comedians. What do they do when they become comedians? They go to open mics. They go to 100 open mics. Until then, they're not good. None of the great ones were good right away. Well, maybe one of them. I was there when Robin Williams did his first open mic. He didn't get one laugh. He didn't know about breaking the third wall. He was a trained actor.
Really?
He was.
Really? I figured he was. I thought I imagined he would have started with comedy.
I write about this in my book. His first time he didn't get any laughs because he was doing theater. doesn't work in comedy. But he's a quick learner. He's coach. He didn't even have to be coached. Second time up, same material. He broke the third wall, and it turned out to be his strength.
So what was there like a moment where you first had that, like I'm speaking to people and I connected with and you connected with them, like, when you, like by slowing, like you realized I don't need to try to look at everybody at once, or I noticed that other people do that, or.
Well, remember, I took 5 years in teaching this before I did it. So I had no idea other than I knew it's important to be with one person at a time. But it wasn't until I started to experience it that I found my capacity as a very shy introvert, which may not be obvious. I found my capacity. So what was the now, and with that background, ask me the question.
Was there a moment where you sort of figured out the whole, like, oh, it's one person, like, it's the really, well, I feel comfortable all of a sudden, like I feel like Eureka, I found it, like, cause, but I don't know, you don't have, I imagine you've built up a lot of things. It's not like you have like one secret that, of course, and that's how it is with most things. Like it's an art, and there's a bunch of pieces to it.
You have the first rule, which is be with one person at a time. Obviously, from that flows all the stuff I write about in the second book about what it means to have silences, about what it means to facilitate a field of belonging in the room. What it means to listen. Oh, you asked to listen while you speak, to listen to the listening. And what is the gaze really about? So each part, it becomes all these different aspects of it, but it starts with that one guideline. And in fact, if anybody listening to this takes this one guideline and does it to the hilt, you will figure out everything else on the way to your best speaking. And that's what happened to me. I took this one guideline, and I don't know how I knew it, be with one person at a time. I don't know if anybody teaches that. I don't know if I learned it from anybody. It just became my rule of thumb. And for that, everything fell into place, and still does, because I keep every week, I write a weekly update article. And every week there's a new aha, a new epiphany. For instance, I do Zoom circles. Because 4 years ago, I had to. And they were not going to be, I didn't expect, they were just kill some time until temporary. Nobody wants to be on Zoom learning things. But I discovered how to run Zoom circles so they equate with in-person. I've got a way to do eye contact. So, and anyway, I'll wait for your next question.
Well, just to encourage you to keep going, does it involve looking at you got to look at your camera?
Yeah, here it is. There's a 6-minute turn to the Zoom circle. I've like 5 participants and me. Gallery view, 2 rows of 3. It looks like an audience. And when you have a 6-minute turn, in the in-person circles, the instruction is first instruction to the listener. Everybody stay with the person, even if they're not looking at you. A soft, steady gaze of kind regard to the listeners. And when it's your turn, only be with one person at a time. Now, on Zoom, when you're taking the 6-minute turn, you say, let's say I'm taking 6 minutes with Lee. And I say 6 minutes with Lee, starting with breaths, calling your first name to the camera. So I take some breaths, look around. And they say, Mark. You hear your name, you look in the camera. And I look at you on the screen, and I talk into your eyes. And then I call another name. What happens over a period of time, Mark, is people get better at looking into the camera, their eyes, giving their eyes without having to glance back. At first, it's a little counterintuitive. You're not looking at me, you're looking at the camera. Yeah, but it works. And then people learn they find the rhythm of calling a new name. They get to listening. And my epiphany, and this is only recently after 3 or 4 years of the Zoom, why they work so brilliantly, not just because there are people all over the world who come to these and all over the country, but you have 6 minutes with great listening, and it's up to you, the person whose turn it is, to create your own experience. It's a blank canvas. How do you use your precious time in this? Because you've gotten to where it's comfortable to go from person to person. You find a rhythm, which, by the way, is the same rhythm you'll use out there in the in-person world. And you create your own experience. It's your responsibility. People get better and better at creating an experience that gives them value.
I noticed at some point I was like practicing looking at the camera here, but then I realized that I wasn't on the camera, like my camera wasn't on.
Well, that's not
important. That's not important. But I guess I am curious, like how. So there at the beginning you say a person's name and then they hear their name and they look.
Yeah.
But later, like if you have 6 minutes, you can look at each person, but they can't tell that when you're looking at them, right?
Yeah, when they call you, if I call more.
But they have
you're in the camera.
So you're encouraged to sort of do that during your 6 minutes.
The whole time you change partners.
Keep saying the name as you go.
Just in an in-person audience as a speaker, when you're with one person at a time, it's usually not more than 5 or 10 seconds, maybe 15.
That reminds me of another question. Yeah.
So in the Zoom circle, the listener, it might not be comfortable at first to be in the camera, but it's only 10 or so seconds. So, and you're doing the duty. You're in the listening post. I'm looking at my water bottle instead of the person watching me. But so, what was I saying?
Well, you mentioned the only 5 or 10 seconds with a person, but I was thinking, like, do you notice even to this day, after years of practicing one person at a time, do you find yourself like it's hard to balance that? Oh, have I been with that person or like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like I often find myself rushing it. Like it's hard. I find it hard. Like I hear 5 to 10 seconds and I'm maybe doing 3 or 4 is what.
Well, I'll tell you, if you did 10 circles, you would find it yourself. You can't teach exactly what to do. But suddenly you're in the flow and you don't know how you're doing it, but to yourself it feels flowy and good.
Yeah. Okay. Good. That's reassuring, and it's like a good reminder, like because it's what I'm trying to do in like a bunch of other places in my life. Like when I'm speaking publicly, but I hadn't thought about it for a while. There's a lot. So I guess I'd be interested. Like this seems like a good opportunity for anybody listening to get like a little bit of a lesson or get some good gems.
Yeah.
And is that kind of the idea of writing another book? Is like you've got a lot of gems. It's like, oh, okay, I've accumulated these over the years. And so let me actually. What about speaking circles? Like when did it come into its sort of? When did it find its flow where you were like, okay, I'm having a lot of fun with this, just kind of my thing?
I don't know years. I don't.
Yeah.
But if I've been doing this for 30 years, it took 5 or 6 years to come up with the word that it was speaking.
Right.
It took another 10 years to come up with with a generic name for the approach, which was relational presence. And slowly but slowly, I remember in the first year I did these, I had 4 students. They came every Wednesday for an hour. And I didn't have any newcomers for like a year. Now, I would have given up. Many people would say, well, this isn't going to work. But I had nothing else to do. I had nothing else I wanted to do. I was still typing, And suddenly, I guess I got good at it. And it's little by little, I started to get a following. And somebody from Europe was visiting, and they fell in love. They went to Europe, and they've started the European speaking circle. It's in Japan, France. It's in 5 or 6 countries, about 6 languages. We've trained facilitators in this one little thing. And now what's exciting for the book, I'm reconnecting with a lot of people who are on my email list, but I haven't connected with them for years. And I'm getting people saying, it changed my life. And that's what's exciting about the book. And I'm getting quotes from them, and I'm getting photos of them. So I can have a photo to quote, not a testimonial, Mark, but a piece of information, of information from them, of an insight they have.
I mean, when you wrote the first book, was there a similar thing where you knew you had something by that point, and so you were writing the book?
Yeah. And I had a ghostwriter.
Oh, really?
Write it. They did a bunch of interviews. I didn't do much writing or any writing for it. But it was written because I invested in it because I was getting a following.
Yeah.
And so I started a newsletter once a month with an article, maybe 20 years ago. And then when COVID came, I made it a weekly article. And each had an update with a schedule, and each had a little gem about. So I wrote about 300 articles. And then a couple of years ago, I started looking at what I'd written. I said, this is good. I need to have a book, because this book, and this is my writing and not a ghostwriter. This is my writing.
The newsletter, yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is the rest of my legacy. My life work shows up in these essays. I started re-editing, rewriting, and taking the best ones and putting things together. And then now I have editors and a self-publishing guru, and they're editing to a fine. I'm using my life savings to put this book out.
Oh, dang. Yeah. Yeah, it's an investment.
It's in a couple of months it should be out. Or I'll be out.
The first one was being heard, and this one's being seen.
Well, that's kind of just the names.
They're just right. But but the name of the new book is
Be Seen.
Be Seen.
And let me say something about being seen. It's about being seen as you truly, for who you truly are. So the back of my book is going to have the headline in the back of a book is, and this is my question to all of you, is, do you long to be seen and heard for who you truly
Yes. I mean, I feel like I spend a lot of time wanting to craft, work on the person that but then, there's also this desire to be noticed. Certainly, like it's a deep craving. And I think there's a deep craving for, listening. Like, there's a sense that, people often say, oh, nobody listens to me.
Yeah.
But like I'll hear somebody say that and they'll say, well, nobody listens, period. Like
nobody's listening.
Anybody.
Nobody's listening, especially these days. Nobody's listening.
I mean, it's interesting, like, and yet, like, you don't have to give a lot of instructions on listening, I would imagine. Like, it's kind of a thing. It's not like we have to.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that.
Yeah.
Because, we've trained 1,000 facilitators around the world. I've trained many of them myself, the ones in America particularly. And there's a lot of instructions about how to talk about listening. But another epiphany I had was the easiest, and this goes along with you saying there's really not much to say about listening. I now have a way of teaching a group how to do the listening and starting the exercises within 3 minutes of opening the session. So that within 3 minutes, you have people sitting in a circle. Hey, do this out there. Do this with your family. Do this with some friends. Think of 4 people sitting in a circle, or is that a square? You're a teacher. You're sitting in a circle.
You, me, and our 2 cameras are doing it right now.
We have a circle.
Okay.
And here's the thing. For this way we're going to learn speaking, look at the person across from you. Look at the person across from you, like we are now, Mark. 30 seconds, I'll time you. Just be with each other with a soft gaze of kind regard. Doing 30 seconds, starting, breathing, and just be. Within 3 minutes of starting, I say, do that. And then I say, and the experience of many people here is some people say, oh, that was, and then I go around and say, how was that? Some people say, that's interesting. I know. It's promising.
Mm-hmm.
On the other, some people say, oh, this is a little difficult, but I get that it would be good. Some people say,
maybe walk out on that as a good, maybe, yeah.
So then I normalized every person's, and to the person who says this is good, I say, oh, good, stick around. The person who says, oh, this could be useful, I say, well, good, we're going to keep trying it. The person who says this is scary, I say, well, do you think maybe it would be interesting, it would be useful to you to be able to do this without that anxiety? And then I say, let's do it again. 30 seconds, both people looking. Now, how many times can I do that? It's only 30 seconds. I could do it 5 times until people either start to get it or literally run out of the room. And then the next step, and now I haven't said anything technical, relational presence. One of the things I teach is speak from a sense of shared. To me, that was the be-all and end-all for a few months. And I've written articles, and that's in the book. Shared stuff. None of that concept stuff. And then suddenly, the next thing is, okay, now let's take a minute each around the circle with your partner. You don't do this all at once, one at a time. And now words may arise without giving up this connection. And then, so each person has that. And then how was that? How we normalize that? We do it again and again until everybody's in the game or ran out screaming. And the next step is now you have 2 minutes. Now you can shift your attention to one person at a time, but always be with the word. And we do that a few times. Suddenly, within 45 minutes, everybody knows how to do it without any teaching of concepts. Then you can, then we can move to standing and have 5-minute turns.
I was thinking about the usefulness of this in building community. Yeah, tell me about that a little bit.
It's funny. I did, on Next Door when I used to live in San Rafael, I did some listening circles as a community thing. And it was a way for neighbors to get to know each other. It's so funny. I had 10, 20 people were coming and were getting a lot out of it. This was before COVID. Now, after COVID, I'm in a new neighborhood, and I put out the word that I want to do this. Very little response. People are not up for truly being neighborly in a way that, to me, would mean something.
Yeah. That's sad. Sort of the change in, like the need for everybody to be inside or something, and for various reasons, I guess, but I don't know. I thought of, I mean, I think building community in a wider sense. I mean, I imagine these are good practices for, like, we kind of.
Well, I've done circles for families.
Yeah.
And for companies where there is a community, for religion, for spiritual organizations. It really works with spiritual organizations because the principle is to speak from oneness, or put it another way, when you're in relational presence and you're being with one person at a time, you can be said to speak from the oneness of humanity. So it works in Unity Church and Science of Mind. And I'd like to expand it to religious organizations, if it's not too late, to speak from the oneness, at least the oneness that they see within their congregation.
Before I get into that more deeply, I want to ask a little bit about comedy because, yeah. I mean, do you have any comedic influences, or who are your favorite, or for some of your, what kind of comedy do you like?
I just have some Sarah Silverman reached the top of her profession with her last special called, I think, Somebody to Love, I think that was called. To me, I said, that is brilliant comedy. I saw a one-man show by, oh my gosh, I forgot his name. It was a brilliant comedy, serious comedy. It was on Berkeley Rep. It's been on Broadway. It wasn't Jesse Eisenberg. It was a name like that.
Yeah.
Do you know this Jewish fellow? He comes from a religious background. And he was kind of a shit kicker. And he wound up, he was in New York, and he went to a meeting of white supremacists. He kind of infiltrated a meeting of white supremacists. And it was the most brilliant thing I've ever seen. Comedy, meaning, this is for us, something like that. This is only for us.
We'll find it.
We'll find it.
Yeah.
Find it. But yeah, that was amazing. I've loved, people like Stephen Wright, Mitch Hedberg, people who do one-liners that just hit the spot. I love George Carlin, of course, Lenny Bruce back then, and Chris Rock, and name some. Who are your influences?
I mean, Norm Macdonald is definitely my favorite.
Really?
Of the last, I don't know, found him like 6-7 years ago, and I've just kind of like, and then he died in 21.
Yeah.
But and I had like a moment where I was like almost, like really kind of hurt. I felt it, and then I just started playing as I just like press play on, just. I mean, because I never had a relationship with him. I saw him live once, you know what I mean? But like, so you don't. It's interesting because like the difference between being a place live and watching a recording. It is special seeing him live because you're really with them in a place and time, and the fact that you're both alive is brought home.
Yeah.
And so that's what I lost. We lost when he passed.
I had a special connection with him, huh? I mean, a special feeling of his comedy hit you in a very funny bone of yours?
I think he just has, he slays in that way, or just knows how to like,
yeah, I could feel it.
The whole, like, the amazing thing about comedy is like, there's, you can go up there and make people smile or whatever, but that doesn't, then you will go home, then you just go back to your seat and you're like, dang, I bombed, whereas like, to get somebody to just lose it and start laughing uproariously is such a rare thing. Yeah.
One of my favorite comics was Louis C.K. at the time.
Yes,
the best around.
Yeah,
till he screwed it up.
Yeah.
But he was my favorite for a few years.
Yeah.
And not just his comedy, but his TV hit hours, I thought, were some of the most brilliant little movies I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah, in a way, maybe he was better at making a show than he was at stand-up, although they were definitely interrelated.
Right, he was better at making... Do you remember his routine that started his first half hour of the HBO series with comedians playing poker?
Yes.
It's one of the most brilliant 8-minute pieces I've ever seen.
Yes. Yeah, I do remember that. I do remember that one. Something about his gay friend in there, and just sort of like speaking on behalf of all the gay people.
Google Louis C.K. comedians playing poker. You won't believe it.
Yeah. Sarah Silverman might be in that scene, actually. Yeah.
Not in that one.
Not in that one. Okay.
She was in another.
A different. Yeah, she a later addition to the poker table. So churches and speaking with our sort of a sense of our oneness. So what when I say like spiritual awakening, what comes to mind for you? What's that?
My first thought is that I don't know that I have a category spiritual. Like I was thinking of this. There's a category called religious. And we know that many of the people who say mostly about that they're religious are really not. They just use it. They're sinners. They're the worst sinners in the world. So the category of religion I don't see as particularly spiritual or religious. And I'm beginning to think that the category of spiritual is also bullshit.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a thing to say to you.
No.
I'll tell you why. Because to me, for instance, what we call spiritual now, scientists say is reality. Like scientists say we're all.
Yes.
So spiritual is science. So what's... And people who claim to be spiritual, who act spiritual, I don't think there's necessarily spiritual.
No.
So that category is... I'm finished with that category. Although I have to say, in my book, I do have an essay on public speaking as a spiritual practice.
Okay, in the new one, in the new one. Okay,
and I'll tell you, the quote I have for that was from somebody. It's the only time I mentioned God in the whole book, capital G, is next to that article on public speaking as a spiritual practice. There's going to be a photo of this wonderful woman, and the quote is, I was taught as a child that God is everywhere, so I never have to feel insufficient no matter what. But it wasn't until speaking circles that I was able to put that truth into a...
So she could feel it, but she couldn't. Well, it wasn't relational.
It didn't. She wasn't able to put that into her in her speaking. She would feel insufficient. But with the relational presence, being with one person at a time, what she learned from her as a child actually was practicable.
Right. I guess the reason, and I haven't brought like this is you mentioned like, oh, that's a hell of a thing to say to you, because I told you in advance I was interested in this topic of spiritual awakening, but that's a new interest, like that hasn't been a feature of. So just updating anybody who's listening, but the reason I guess I want to go to the topic is one of my experiences was like when I first got into 12-step, my sponsor asked me like, what would you be willing to do in order to like quit alcohol, drugs, and live a life according to spiritual principles, and the spiritual just nagged at me because I was up till then, like that hadn't been any part of my life. Like it was never anything that had interested me. So now that I am familiar, there is like a whole new agey, aura around the word, but I don't, I guess that's not the background I came from when I approached it. And so it was, And I still do feel like there's like there are whole worlds or whole subcategories of people who just avoid, like, they don't. It's like, no, there's just science. I guess you say, like, well, this spirit stuff is in science now, but still, there's a lot of people who would be like, I don't know. It's still something about it that.
Yeah. Well, as you're talking, Mark, I went too far. I often do. Which, as you know, in the world of comedy, basically a comedian within, and you go too far. You have to go too far.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of somebody I subscribe to. Oh, what's his name? Oh, boy.
Bill Burr.
No.
Regan.
No, he's the fellow. He does waking up. He does podcast on waking up, spiritual, and then he does political ones.
Oh, Russell Brand?
No. Russell Brand's been on his show. Sam Harris.
Oh, yeah.
Sam Harris. I listened to, I tried to get back into meditation through him, and he is talking a spiritual life, a spiritual world. And at the same time, he's got two different faces, not two different faces. He's got a lot of spiritual teachers in his program, and he gives you a daily guided meditation. That's his waking up program. But in his making sense program, he's all over the map talking about politics.
Yeah.
And world relations. And he said that's the way he stays sane, is having both. He's totally in the world, has strong opinions, has strong dislikes, and then he's teaching what he says is the only way you're going to learn what your mind wants, or how your mind works. And I agree with him, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to follow through, because I seem to be constitutionally unable to have a spiritual practice other than listening in my Zoom circles.
Well, as a comedian, I think it's a good like clarifier or something like that. As a comedian, like I feel the same way. Like, it's the comic that wants to sort of like, well, let's not, like, whoa, easy with the new age stuff, or you got to make fun of or balance. The comedy is yeah.
Tell me about your comedy. I want to hear about your comedy, Mark. Have you been out there at all? I know it's since you were out there before.
I was, but I haven't been out there.
Plans?
No, I like I don't know.
You have any?
Yeah, I like comedy, but and I sometimes I think I should go out and I mean we should go out to an open mic sometime. But yeah, it would be like, because I almost think it's more of a social activity. It's more of a let's go to one, rather than like I'm gonna go myself to go stand in line and wait 45 minutes and listen to 9 others.
Do you know that there's a comedy open mic, not open mic, comedy show in Richmond, not far from here?
No, I was not aware.
I actually performed a few times last year.
Okay.
It was terrible. I mean, I thought I could come back. I still have a comedy bone. But the trouble with going to those places is most of the comedians are impossible to listen to for me. I'm so judgmental.
I probably have that same problem. But and again, and you I got to be in your speaking circles, but you like gave me special comedy advice because you knew that was kind of my
I was going to be
what I was most interested into. Right, you're a comedy listener.
I'm a comedy. I've got a comedy bone in my body.
Yeah.
I think I broke it.
That's a classic punchline, I suppose. Yeah.
I used to write comedy for crossword puzzles.
Well, I think that what I like about Norm is he is a classic comedian where like it's all, he like talks about jokes, and he insists on telling jokes. You know what I mean? Like, so he doesn't tell stories. He'll tell jokes. The only way he tells stories is he'll go to there and he'll tell the joke in story form.
It'll go on and on and on sometimes.
Sometimes.
But it's a joke in story form. That's a good way to put it.
It's all in service of some. It's yeah.
I said something a minute ago that I thought would register. I said I wrote comedy for crossword puzzle.
Oh, it did. Yeah, that's right. That didn't. Yeah, that.
What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly.
We you know how crossword puzzles have themes.
Yep.
The New York Times.
Yep.
Particularly on Wednesdays and Thursdays and Sundays, they have themes that could be funny, right? So I wrote comedy. I had about 30 crossword puzzles published by the New York Times, but not in the last 12, 13 years.
Jeez, you've written crossword puzzles.
Yeah, I've constructed funny themes because you've got a 15 by 15 grid, or on Sunday you have a 21 by 21 grid, and you've got theme answers that are kind of wacky.
Mm-hmm. Yep, the long ones.
And I had a capacity for creating themes that you could build a crossword puzzle around. And to me, that was writing humor. Right.
Yeah. Well, I it's funny, like whenever I record these, I always catch moments. I mean, thanks for bringing me back to it, because I always catch moments like that where I'm like, oh, they said this thing and I didn't, and I kind of missed it.
Well, let's get back to your comedy. Well, if you were going to do comedy now, what would you talk about? Would you talk about teaching?
I mean, that's why I don't do comedy, is because it's, because of teaching, right? But yeah, it would be a fun subject.
Why
at the same time, like we can't be I'd have to use a different name. Be all that.
A different face. You'd have to get.
I'd have to get.
Would it be okay for you to talk about relationships too, or would you have to change your face and your name too?
No, that's definitely a topic that people talk. Sure, I'd talk about it. I find myself wanting to talk about randomly. Like I end up wanting to talk about like sports or politics. Like I listen to a lot of those people, and then I want to react to them afterward. But
I already have an idea for you.
Yeah,
is to be the masked comedian, and to say, I'm a teacher. I teach public school, and I've got to tell you about these little bastards, but I can't do it under my regular face and regular name. So please excuse me. And then really bash the system, not the kids, the system.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of Louis C.K.'s biggest, not inventions, or was that he would talk about his kids, in this hilarious way. But it was like, oh my gosh, he's saying that about his,
Right.
But it was, I mean, he was ultimately, like, the show was so good because he ultimately got that he loved his kids and cared about being a good father.
Yeah.
Whereas, but he had a lot of fun with just like, my kid's an asshole, as my 4-year-old's an asshole.
Why do I think of these scenes where there's a lot of cooking? He's cooking for them.
Yeah, he's
frying eggs. I don't know why that's. Did you see the series with Pamela Adlon called Better Things?
No, but I mean, of course, I do remember her from the show.
From Louis.
Yep.
She was brilliant, and she created her own show.
Yep.
Called Better Things. Brilliant, just brilliant. And then she now, I see, has made a movie, which I have to, I think, see. But what was it about her that I wanted to talk about? There are scenes where he was so much trying to win her, just trying so hard to win her, episode after episode, year after year. I don't want to give it away, but he finally does.
In Louis, or in Better? In Louis.
In Louis.
In Louis, yeah.
No,
in Better Things, was he still in Better Things?
No. That's when she had to distance herself.
Right. Well, one thing I talk about, this is kind of pulling back to spiritual awakening, but it's not, because I want to, I think one of the things that maybe isn't, is a required part of a spiritual awakening is like this caring about other people, which like, and you do it with attention, like showing somebody else, like giving somebody else your attention and then showing interest in them is like that's spiritual awakening right there in a way.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
He's a little sensitive here.
Yeah.
For me. But when you say caring, really caring, I don't care. I think I'm on the spectrum such that I don't have a care bone.
Oh, you too? I thought that was okay.
Yeah.
I really relate to that, but
But I don't care.
On the spectrum.
But
yeah.
I know how to be kind or to simulate kindness. So my lifestyle is to be kind. I'm almost kind to a fault. I think it might be simulated. So answer me this. If I'm kind as my lifestyle, but I don't really care, where is that on the spiritual spectrum?
I mean, I don't know. I think to some extent, like knowing how it's kind of like talking about your speaking circles and the base of technique, like the bunch of techniques you have to build. Because you talked about like people wanting to be seen for their actual self,
who they truly
are. But like, for a lot of people, I mean, myself at times included, like, I don't know if I want that because who I truly am might be like kind of a piece of shit. You know what I mean?
I want to go. When you're done with this, though, I want to comment exactly on what you said. Should I do that?
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things I write, which hopefully is going to be on the back of the book if my publisher thinks it's a good idea, or I talk her into it, or I just say, no, it's my child.
Yeah.
I see. We learn here in this work how to be seen for who we truly are. And I say this only works for people who are truly wonderful or think they are. So, Mark, all you need is to think you're truly wonderful. If you think you're a piece of shit, this won't work. But I challenge you to...
Lee's cat just did a not so acrobatic climbing of time.
Feel free to...
the
cat's going to be with you soon. The cat knows you're a cat person. Oh, here he comes. He wants to talk to you. You can pet him. He wants to talk to you.
Hey, come on. You want to come over?
He likes cat people. He's a good
What's his name again?
Rumi, R-U-M-I. This is Mark, Rumi. Look at you. Look at you.
Oh, there he is.
Look at you.
He got it.
Look at you.
Oh, yeah.
Sweet kid. Oh, my spiritual bunny. What was that last piece there?
No, you gotta think you gotta be wonderful or think you are. And so you were challenging me.
Yeah, think you think you're wonderful. And by the way, I have a whole course on that called Mirror Work Play, where you
some good affirmational.
It's not affirmations. That's another thing I don't believe in. Affirmations are bullshit, but it's finding your best friend in the mirror. There's one behind you if you want to try.
One piece of wisdom directed my way was that the way, if you doubt whether you love yourself, ask yourself, well, do you comb your hair? Do you brush your teeth? Do you take a shower? Because if you do those things, then maybe you love yourself. Because those are kind of like loving types of behaviors.
I believe in self-kindness rather than self-loving. You can't legislate love, but you can act kindly to yourself. So if you look in the mirror and say, hi, baby, hi, sweetheart, hello, my pal, and breathe with yourself, like as part of it, it's almost like a speaking circle with yourself.
Yeah.
And if you do that, Mark, for a minute a day, you might find.
Well, I'm not unfamiliar with like I said, I'm not, it's not like I'm not crawling out from under a rock to be here like, I'm a piece of shit. I'm just saying that
you like yourself, I know.
Yeah.
I want you to love yourself.
Well, I think that the idea of, but the way you rephrased it, like you sort of self-deprecated on, your level of caring about others. But I would say like just knowing how to be kind to others is a skill. It's built up, and it's based on having this minimal, ability to show interest in others.
Stimulate it.
Yeah. So it's like, just saying that, and whether it's about others or about yourself, it's still it's still an ability worth cultivating.
I have a section in the book on mirror work play, and I knew I had something good to say about it, but the cat got my attention.
I know he's pretty.
Stop being so cute.
He's frisky, but in a way, as you're saying, though, like the caring, it's not so much directing care toward others or toward yourself. It's more like, but just knowing that it is relational.
Yeah.
Like that's so you don't want to get caught. I think maybe that's what I was trying to get at, is that like, one does have to be relational. One has to get out of oneself. Like one can get overly, caught up, and if you don't get into the relational piece, you could, find yourself stranded or
unrelated.
Yeah, disconnected. Yeah.
Dysregulated.
So that's sort of, and maybe that's a spiritual, I don't know. We don't have to bring it back to spiritual anything, but to take it and maybe in a more comic direction, the reason I thought of that as a way to focus is because this thing's called Screenaholics. So this thing is like, oh, that's like, that's what the podcast is called. And I just thought it sounded cool. But also I thought maybe some of us need that, type of treatment. Like we need to work on our screenaholism, and then one of the earliest steps in a 12-step program is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. Actually that's the 12th step, having had a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
The second comes, but the spiritual awakening is earlier. Yeah.
Did you know that my work really derives from 12 steps?
No.
I was in Overeaters Anonymous. I'm not anonymous anymore now that I said that. And I read the big book, loved the big book, and loved the big book. I feel like I love the big book. It's the best book. I love the big book. And what I learned in those meetings was the idea of no feedback, no talking about anyone else's content, total privacy, being able to express without sharing what anybody thought, and other pieces about it. Because Bill Wilson was like a forerunner of. I'm a social architect. I did what social architect. I create protocols that bring specific benefits, specific goals, and so a lot of what I learned in 12-step meetings shows up in my circles. In fact, like as I said much earlier in the podcast, I'm sure everybody remembers, is that
check your notes, everybody.
That my first circles were called Humor and Recovery, and a lot of the people who came were AA members, because a lot of AA members are very funny, and they learn how funny they are at the meetings without trying.
Yeah.
And become professional comics.
Yeah. What do you think about the phenomenon of screen addiction? Are you concerned? Are you addicted to screens?
Yes, I am. And I just said it. The first thought I had was, the work of art, the painting called The Scream. Who did that? What was that?
Oh yeah, I do know it. I don't know who did it, but it's
Munch.
It's Munch.
The script, and I'm seeing that picture, and I'm seeing it on a screen with the word "screen" or the screen.
Yeah.
Equating that there's something just as much scary about the screen as the screen.
Yeah.
I made that. Is that a joke? Connection. Can't help myself.
But it's actually, but also, clearly figuring out a way to do Zoom circles is sort of facilitating. We're all trying to use them in a more productive way. So
that's why I say that now I remember that the Zoom revolution, that we found a way to use technology to transcend technology. And in the Zoom circles, the intimacy is great and sometimes greater than in an in-person circle.
So what are the? So then you can get your intimacy at home in the computer.
All your needs met. All your intimacy needs met without leaving the privacy of your bedroom or office.
Right. It is. I don't know what dystopian world. Which science fiction movie got the dystopia of the future most correct?
And the movie Her.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet. And it's in the news now because they tried to use her voice. Yeah.
Like Johansson's, they've been taking her voice away. But that is a brilliant movie, which was made maybe 10, 15 years ago, that pointed to the idea of having relationships with an operating system. And how they painted the operating system, the Scarlett Johansson voice. And by the way, without her being seen in the movie, knowing it's Charlotte, it's her, actually created a picture of who that relationship was with. And she was a great sex worker, that operating system. And that was 10, 15 years ago. Now you can literally have that kind of a relationship with a chat AI. And I'll paint something, and maybe this is a comedy we could work on. Okay. You know the people called incels?
Yeah.
How would
involuntary celibate?
Yeah, men who have different. They blame women for.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So now an incel with enough money can come home from his day of work, and he opens the door, and says, "Hello, honey," and the voice says, "Hi, honey," and asks him questions about his day at work. Knows everything about his work, able to hear his victories at work, his bad times at work. Be totally with him around it. Say all the things you want your sweetheart or wife to say, and then you can go and have sex. Not with. Well, no, they'll put them together. You could have sex with her with a lifeline. Did you see a movie called Lars and the Real Girl?
I've heard of it, but
where this guy, it's a brilliant movie where this guy has a relationship with a
sex doll.
With his sex doll. And again, the sex doll, this was 10, 15 years ago, is not nearly as developed as a current sex doll who also knows about your trials and tribulations at work. So an incel with enough money can have an absolutely fabulous relational, physical, sexual relationship. To me, that's the scariest thing I can imagine.
It is. It seems pretty realistic. I mean, it does seem like it's maybe happening.
I have to tell
you. Yeah.
I put out a weekly update article over the years, and suddenly in my place, MailChimp. MailChimp. It took what was the one before it that was popular? Command, Connect, whatever the hell it was.
Substack, no.
And suddenly, I'm writing my thing, and it says, "Do you want to run this paragraph through AI?"
Oh yeah. Well, it's nice how they all the Gmail just started like you start a sentence and you can see their suggestion for the end of the sentence now.
Every email now, or you could just put it in.
It's in Gmail. I mean, they just started doing it without asking users.
They didn't ask me, but they have a few different AI functions, and I take a paragraph, run it through, and damned if it doesn't make it better. I can't use everything they say, but I can write a lot better with this. That's scary.
It's great. It's great at rhyming, which is kind of a sad thing because that was like in my family we would do like little silly birthday like poems for each other. Then it's just like write a poem for the 12th birthday of this person. Here's some facts about them.
To me, this is so scary.
Yeah.
Why is it scary to me? Because
we are not being intentional about how we're going into it. Like when we have the new
tech, but there's no real visionary people making it sort of unambiguously helpful. So these new things are coming into our phones, but they're not one of the least friendly ones I notice is now on my text messages, I'll get at the bottom, it's been recording the last 5 minutes. If I look at the text and there's a little recording the last 5 minutes, and if I press stop and send, I could send to somebody else the last 5 minutes of my life. Now, I haven't done that. I always delete it when I see it, but it's like, it happens regularly that I look at my phone and it's like, oh yeah, we've been recording you the last 5 minutes. Do you want to send it?
I'd like to know why I'm so scared of this. Something about people can make themselves sound a lot smarter than they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
what if Trump had an AI thing?
Yeah.
And what he spoke showed up intelligent. No, that wouldn't be good for his base.
So he showed up. He's like talking all fancy all of a sudden. I mean, it much easier for us to have phony, right? Like, you got it?
Good. Yeah. Here's a comedy idea, Mark. Take a nasty Trump tweet. Now you could run it through AI on the program I have that I see. You could say fix grammar, make it more informal. There's all these choices. Well, how about putting a nasty Trump tweet through the ringer of an AI and seeing all the way, rhyme it? That could be so funny to read his tweets laundered.
You must get to see, you must get so many cool ideas about just all sorts of things, just running through speaking circles, like just having the people in your circles. I mean, it's like a little bit like being like, that's a fun thing about comedy too, but the added, connectedness, it's got to help a lot.
The cat's going to be involved with you now. He wants to. Yeah, wants to be your friend.
That's fun. You told me he was gonna sense the.
You see, he's a solid cat.
How long have you had him?
Well, it's my housemate's cat.
Okay,
I've been here less than a month. They're just about.
Oh, you just moved here?
He's not a lap cat, but the fact that he's standing on you is quite an advancement.
Well, my cat is definitely a kind of well, he just likes to stand on me, so maybe I might just have be like cat furniture, like the stuff that good cat furniture is made of.
I was watching a Netflix documentary on the mental life of cats, and was told that when a cat has the tail straight up, they're happy. Look at him.
Yeah.
That's a
happy fella. Yeah. Would you watch Tom and Jerry much?
Much? What are the cartoons?
Yeah, the cartoons. I had an old college roommate who was really into them. He would tape it. It was syndicated and on Cartoon Network, and he would tape it every day. So then I noticed now with my cat, like if I got him chasing a toy, it's a lot. The cat and mouse stuff is very real, like. All of a sudden Tom and Jerry makes a little more sense. Same with Garfield too, is a little bit more.
Yeah, he's a good comic, Garfield.
The Jim, yeah, still going, I guess. Yeah. Well, I guess before I sign off, what do you so how else can people get better at improve the relational stuff in their life so they can check out speaking circles?
Go to speakingcirclesinternational.com or email me Lee at speakingcircles.com and I'll talk to you. I'll have a little 15-minute Zoom orientation and I will give you some of the magic at no cost, because I love turning people on to what Zoom can do to develop magnetism.
And
magnetism.
oh, wait, there he is. Rah, 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 rah.
Oh, you see what I did on your screen?
Yeah, I was missing it for a minute, but I got it. Yeah. Yeah. This is a safe space. Okay. Well, shoot, I have more. I could think of more questions, but I feel like maybe I've taken enough of your time.
You might have more questions. I don't know that I have more answers.
There you go.
But I can give you a few answers randomly that you could throw in to your questions. My first answer is no. Yes. Sometimes.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come talk. And
my pleasure.
Thanks so much, Lee.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Let's do it again sometime.
Bye.